Hey folks, it's Tom Numbers here. When I talk about numbers for new viewers, A is 1, the first letter of the alphabet, B is 2, C is 3, all the way through to Z or Z, the 26th letter. So let's have a chat about Jeffrey Epstein. What is the truth about Jeffrey Epstein? So, I've thought for a while now, and I've mentioned it briefly in other shows, but I've never dedicated a whole show to it. I felt for a while that Jeffrey Epstein is a white hat sting operation. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you take the perspective, which I do, that prior to 2020 was the first kind of obvious signs of it with lockdowns, but there was something far bigger going on to redeem the planet, and that's been accompanied by a number of things in terms of frequencies, the Great Awakening, all these other things that have been going on, but we're still in a 3D world. And hang on a second, a 3D world. So with that, you need some 3D help to clear up the swamp, to make the world great again. And it's all well and good, everyone's saying, well, you know, the power is within and you save yourself, and yes, you do, but we're still in that juxtaposition of a 3D reality, and there's practical steps being taken that is changing the world, and Jeffrey Epstein is a key figure in this. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we look at the numbers, let's have a look at the numbers on this. Jeffrey Epstein comes to 163, which comes to Make America Great Again. So that's one right off the bat. Epstein Island comes to 147, which comes to the Trump card. And President Trump has a lot of Trump cards that he can play, and one of them is Jeffrey Epstein. Now, if you're somewhat awake to a lot of the things that have been going on, then you would have seen videos out there showing masks of people, kind of Mission Impossible style masks like the Tom Cruise films. And you will know, obviously, now there's AI. And so basically, what we're being told on the mainstream media is being constructed and fashioned in a way to create certain narratives, and sometimes those narratives can be polar, they can be opposing, and people in some ways have a choice of what narrative they want to choose, and therefore they align with that frequency of that narrative, and their reality starts to mold and bend in that way. So Jeffrey Epstein, I did a video about this ages ago, well, back in August. I've done one prior to that, but if you do the number 322 is the skull and bones number that they use. It's not the actual number in gematria that it comes up to, but 322 is nevertheless the number that they chose. And so if you do Jeffrey Epstein cloning facility, it comes to 322. If you also do Jeffrey Epstein is John F. Kennedy, comes to 322. Now, if you do Jeffrey Edward Epstein, it's 218 in numbers, which comes to John F. Kennedy Jr., 87 Jr. Now, whether John is playing that character or not, I wouldn't be surprised if he is. But also, there could be many characters playing many characters at any given moment for the purposes of this. So the other thing about this is National Security Agency, so NSA, comes to 261. 261 comes to November 22nd for JFK1. It comes to August 31st for Princess Diana. Michael Jackson's birthday, August 29th. Liam Payne, his birthday, 261, August 29th. And there's a lot of 261s that are floating around. So the NSA, the CIA, other agencies, but the NSA is the biggest one. That's the one that's caught everybody, and the white hats are running that. And so the NSA, with their abilities, with their masks, with their technology, they're able to basically pull anything off. And so there's a whole thing with all the vaccines. So vaccines, we can talk about it now more freely because the censorship is less on it now. It still isn't gone, but it's less on it. So if you're President Trump and the white hat team, and you allow the narrative that was going to be lockdowns, the Bill Gates lockdowns, you allow that narrative to run while doing a major clear-up operation, which is what went on in 2020. So you keep the public off the streets, you can do all the earthquake military dumb explosions around the world, and you can run many operations at once. President Trump said it in 2020, so we can do many things all at the same time. So that's been going on. And then the vaccine, and some people won't like this, but I'm going to say it. So President Trump came out with Warp Speed, Operation Warp Speed. Operation Warp Speed. Warp Speed is 107 military, 107. Quantum, 107. Atonement, 107. Trump's 107. Currency, 107. Aquarius, 107. Operation is 113, which is also Universe. Operation Warp Speed is 220. Military operation is 220. So when President Trump said through Operation Warp Speed, he was talking about the military doing what was necessary to clean up everywhere, to tag people that had been doing the bad things with children and women and men and trafficking and all that stuff. So they flagged up early to run the narrative of what had been going on, or what was going to go on under a Hillary regime. But like it says, he was never meant to win, meaning President Trump. So his military team that he's part of, they ran the operation to tag everyone with that marker, with Qelby. And then what does it come down to when some people have been maimed, died through vaccines? I have an uncle that's died because of the vaccine. So I have skin in the game on this. But I also know people that have had vaccines and have woken up. So how does that play out? And then when you've got people like Epstein, how does that play out? Remember, we're still in the phase where the majority of people are still being protected in terms of who they are and what they've been doing. Tom Hanks is a classic case. But the white hats are telling people, so there's an advert here in the UK called Hank's Pizza. Just came out last week, and it's promoting Microsoft, Bill Gates software. So people in the know that Tom Hanks was one of the bad ones. But then obviously Epstein is getting hammered because he is in my opinion, he's the construct of a white hat military. There may not even actually be a real person called Epstein. Maybe there was an original and he got swapped out, I don't know for sure. But the Epstein character, that narrative, they're using to run their military operation. And Epstein, you listen to him talking, he's red pilling people all the time. So that interview with Steve Bannon is pure white hat red pilling. He's telling everyone about the fractional reserve banking system. A lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. And he starts off teaching and educating the world about the fictitious banking system. So Epstein can easily, and probably in my opinion, is a character in a mask, hence this whole confusion of did he die, did he hang himself? No, he's a character that they're using to bring about the Great Awakening. I said back in August that the number 322, which is the Skull and Bones number, that comes to Jeffrey Epstein cloning facility, and I pinpointed one area where that was going on, and that's Woking in the UK and England, Surrey, and the A road that goes past it is A322. And then what happens in the Epstein files a few weeks ago? It's confirmed that Epstein was involved in cloning. Now, this might be another thing that people get their bee in the bonnet about. Some will say the good guys don't use clones. Are we sure about that? Are we 100% sure about that? I don't know. I would question that. In fact, I don't believe that's the case. I've met people who are famous, and anyone that's followed my work for a while will know that I've bumped into many famous folk, but I was always kept outside the system because of what's going on now. So I was protected, but I've met many of the people in the timeline. And clones or walk-ins, swaps, I've met people that are famous that are not the same famous person they were 5-10 years ago when I first met them, 15 years ago, some of them. So what's that about? I believe that white hats have the ability to create characters through masks, through CGI, through galactic walk-ins, and also simply, I say simply, through clones. And those clones, those cloning facilities were taken over, and the white hats are using them in a way that they deem necessary to bring about the Great Awakening, to have the least amount of casualties possible. This is not black and white. Everything is 50 shades of grey. But you have to figure all of this stuff out for yourself. And we put in the bits that we come across and let people understand it or not. But Epstein, in my opinion, is a white hat creation. But the narrative of Epstein will run and do its job, because most of the world aren't looking at the truther channels. And within the truther movement, everyone and his dog has got an opinion. But I was right about the Jeffrey Epstein cloning facility. I did that code. I did the Woking stuff 2 years ago, and then I re-brought it back up when the events of Charlie Kirk, that fake assassination, took place. And the place where he was taken out was the Utah Valley University, which again is 322, Skull and Bones number, which is Jeffrey Epstein cloning facility. But there's also other good versions of that now. And so this is a complicated game, and we're still going through it, but the truth is coming out, and people will know. There'll be things I'll find out that I didn't know about, and that's the joy of all this. You have to have joy within it, and you have to have humour within it, even though I'm talking about serious subjects. Some other things which I'll probably do soon are Ghislaine Maxwell. So in Back to the Future, which is a pure white hat coded narrative of what's been going on, and my name is embedded in it. So in the opening scene, well, one of the early scenes, where Biff is in George McFly's home, and in the kitchen there's a jar, a coffee jar, and it's Maxwell, like Maxwell House. And I've noticed that for a long time. I'm like, Ma Maxwell, so Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, her birthday, guess what it is? It's December 25th, it's Christmas Day. George Michael dies on Christmas Day, last Christmas, in that year of witness protection, which was 2016. it was a monkey year. The word monkey in numbers is 83. The word election in 83 is numbers. Leicester City won the Premier League in 2016. They were created in 2006. They were created 100 year or so before that, in a year of the monkey. And the election, the US election, America's a monkey nation. The US election took place in 2016 and President Trump got back into power, or got into power publicly. But Ghislaine Maxwell was born on Christmas Day. The most important date, well, there's a few, but one of the most important dates of Back to the Future is November 5th. November 5th is the date that time travel was invented in Back to the Future, which is November 5th, 1955. Sorry, November 5th, 1955, which comes to 377 in numbers. And there's another one which I'll share with you in the next show about that. November 5th is the date that President Trump won the election in 2024, the day of all days that flipped it back. Guess who died supposedly on the day, November 5th, connected to Ghislaine Maxwell? Her father, Robert. Robert in numbers is 78 Kennedy. He's buried, or supposedly buried, up on the Mount of Olives with all the Hurrah Henrys of Israel. I've said for a long time that Epstein is a double, triple. I believe that most likely Robert Maxwell was as well. He got taken off the board publicly ages ago on a boat out in the Atlantic near the Canary Islands. In the Q post it says, when does a canary sing? There's canary, I think, capital with one of the cryptos. But is Robert Maxwell maybe one of the canaries that will sing? He'll be old now, but if he's gone to Valhalla, then he's probably fine and doing very well and very young. My point is, there's been certain families in this game that have been high, prominent, and the Trumps are one of them. But maybe, just maybe, the Maxwells were one of them as well. And for whatever reason, and only time will show it, they were chosen to do this role. Bearing in mind that Robert Maxwell was born Czechoslovakian, he was brought into the French, Israel and English system and changed his name to Robert Maxwell. Where he was born, that was on the Austrian, Hungarian, or Czech, that was all part of the Austrian, I think back then that the Czechoslovakia was part of the Hungarian, Austrian Empire, or was it Czech, Hungarian, something. I need to check it. I looked at it briefly last night. But now, interestingly enough, that physical location of where he was born, the town he was born in, is now actually part of Ukraine. And bearing in mind President Trump's first wife, Ivana, was Czechoslovakian. So the Eastern Europeans have been a big part of this. They've been overshadowed, but I believe they've been a big part of all of this waking up process. And so Robert Maxwell, I would say, watch this space. I don't believe the public narrative. He was a media tycoon. I don't believe the narrative of what was said about him. Others might say differently, and they probably will. But my point is, look at the date he supposedly dies, November 5th. I mean, what's the chances of that? What's the chances of his daughter being on Christmas Day? Last president. Christmas comes to 110 in numbers. The word president comes to 110 in numbers. The president comes to 143. The Tesseract 143, which changes timelines. November 5th comes to 143. Melania Trump comes to 143. Ground Zero comes to 143. Building 7 comes to 143. And my dear cousin Paul, who's been giving me help with the numbers from beyond, comes to 143. Everything is not as it seems, folks. But the overriding thought I want to leave you with is that God's in control, God's won, and we're getting there. So don't get too hung up on all the ins and outs. As long as we keep rising, which we're doing, then we're fine. But Mission Impossible 217, Lady Diana Frances Spencer 217, Houses of Parliament 217, Tom Sidney Bushnell, my name 217. Not everything is as it seems. Q Witness Protection is 261. Frederick Christ Trump plus Q is 261. November 22nd for JFK in 63. November 22nd comes to 261. Princess Diana in 1997 in Paris. The Alma Tunnel, the Almanac, the middle name in the Book of Mormon. 261. August 31st comes to Q Witness Protection. There's a Q bus stop outside Westminster Abbey, and I found it. I found it in COVID. So anyway, all right, folks, hit the like, subscribe button, whichever channel you're on. And here's my Wayne's World section. If you want to increase your frequency, you can do that with the AHA Halo Scalar. Scalar is 54 love, 54 orbs, 54. My link's below, $30 off, and free international shipping. So anyway, folks, I guarantee you there's something more coming with the Maxwells and with Epstein. Jeffrey 75 comes to funding, comes to eternal, comes to magic wand, and Trump has said, I guess we have a magic wand. Epstein Island 147, the Trump card. Make America Great Again 163. Jeffrey Epstein 163 plus Epstein Island 147 comes to 310. Malachi 310 is the scriptural reference to the windows of heaven and Jasara Nasara. 310. 310 is the quantum financial system. See you, folks.